What made cinema start imagining the end of the world? Where did the wastelands, the nuclear fire, and the undead we still fear today come from? This episode is a guide through the birth of post-apocalyptic cinema, from H.G. Wells' visions in the 1930s through Cold War nightmares to Mad Max and the Terminator. It's the story of how the genre took shape, step by step, and why it still captivates and terrifies audiences today. Things to Come, 1936 UK. Long before cinema embraced wastelands and visions of nuclear fire, H.G. Wells created a story that was far ahead of its time. Things to Come is an epic journey through 100 years of imagined history, from the outbreak of a devastating world war, through plague and the collapse of civilization, to the slow and painful rebirth of a new order. We see cities in ruins, desperate survivors fighting for a future, and a dream of rebuilding society from the ashes. This wasn't just science fiction, but a warning about humanity's destructive ambitions. Monumental sets, ambitious design, and prophetic ideas made the film the very first foundation of post-apocalyptic cinema. It introduced the core question that would define the genre for decades. Once the world ends, how do we start again? And what kind of future will we create from the rubble of the old one? On the Beach, 1959, USA, the world has already ended. A nuclear war has wiped out nearly all of humanity. Only Australia remains untouched, waiting for the slow, inevitable arrival of radioactive clouds drifting south. There are no mutants, no explosions, only silence, ordinary routines, and the knowledge that life is running out. People fall in love, drink coffee, walk along the beach, trying to live normally while the shadow of extinction looms overhead. That everyday humanity is exactly what makes the film so powerful. On the Beach doesn't frighten with spectacle, but with melancholy, quiet despair and dignity in the face of the inevitable. It was one of the first films to portray apocalypse not as an adventure or disaster movie, but as a human tragedy. Decades later, it still remains one of the most haunting depictions of nuclear annihilation ever put on screen. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961 UK. In this story, it isn't war but human arrogance that pushes the planet toward destruction. A series of nuclear tests knocks Earth off its orbit, sending it drifting closer to the sun. Heat rises, London swelters, and society begins to collapse under growing panic. At the center are journalists, struggling to report the unfolding disaster while questioning if survival is even possible. The film combines the intensity of a thriller with a prophetic warning. Mankind often brings about its own downfall. Its images of a city boiling in chaos and people desperately searching for hope were bold and unsettling for the early 1960s. The Day the Earth Caught Fire proved that the apocalypse on screen didn't have to come from alien invaders. Sometimes the most terrifying threat is the one we unleash ourselves. It remains one of the earliest and most visionary warnings about climate and nuclear catastrophe. The War Game, 1966 UK. Styled as a BBC documentary, The War Game was so intense it was banned from television for almost 2 decades. It imagines what would happen if nuclear war broke out over Britain. Missiles launched, cities targeted, ordinary families suddenly caught in firestorms. There are no heroes, only civilians suffering burns, radiation sickness, and starvation. The film shows soldiers executing looters, hospitals overwhelmed, and children orphaned within days. By stripping away spectacle and focusing on raw human suffering, it makes the nuclear threat terrifyingly real. Far from science fiction, it looks like newsreel footage of a disaster unfolding in your own town. Even today, The War Game remains one of the most powerful anti-war films ever created, a stark reminder that nuclear war wouldn't mean instant annihilation, but the slow, painful breakdown of society itself. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, USA. It begins with a brother and sister visiting a graveyard, and suddenly the dead walk again. Soon, a group of strangers barricades themselves inside a farmhouse, trying to survive against relentless flesh-eating ghouls. George A. Romero didn't just reinvent the zombie, he gave birth to the entire idea of a zombie apocalypse. Fear comes not only from the creatures outside, but from the breakdown of trust within the house. Arguments, paranoia, and racial tensions simmer until everything collapses. The shocking ending, bleak and merciless, reflected the turbulence of 1960s America. Night of the Living Dead showed that horror could be social commentary, and that the end of the world might not be caused by monsters alone, but by human conflict. This was the starting point for decades of zombie cinema, setting the template for everything that followed. Planet of the Apes, 1968 USA. Astronauts crash on a strange planet ruled by intelligent apes, where humans are treated as primitive animals. The story unfolds as a thrilling adventure and a biting satire on class, science, and power. But the legendary twist ending, the Statue of Liberty half buried in the sand, revealed the horrifying truth. This wasn't another world, but Earth, destroyed by human hands. That final image became one of cinema's most iconic moments, transforming the film into a cautionary tale about arrogance, war, and nuclear self-destruction. Planet of the Apes wasn't just a hit sci-fi film, it was a cultural milestone that proved mainstream audiences were ready for darker, more provocative visions of the future. It remains one of the defining classics of the post-apocalyptic genre. The Omega Man, 1971 USA. Los Angeles lies abandoned after a global plague, its streets silent by day and crawling with mutants by night. Charlton Heston plays Robert Neville, a scientist and soldier who may be the last uninfected human alive. He hunts by day, fortifies his home by night, and tries to find a cure for humanity. The mutants, sensitive to light, are both his enemies and a distorted reflection of the world he lost. The Omega Man captured the loneliness of survival, the terror of isolation, and the desperate hope for connection. Its images of empty freeways and darkened skyscrapers have influenced countless films that came after. More than just a survival thriller, it cemented the archetype of the last man on Earth that still defines post-apocalyptic storytelling today. Mad Max, 1979, Australia. The world hasn't ended yet, but it's unraveling fast. Highways are ruled by violent gangs, gasoline is scarce, and the law is collapsing. Max Rokitansky, a highway patrolman, tries to hold the line until his family is brutally taken from him, pushing him over the edge. Mad Max is both a revenge story and a prophecy, showing a society right on the brink of collapse. Its low-budget grit, high-speed chases, and raw violence electrified audiences and created the blueprint for the wasteland aesthetic. This wasn't the apocalypse yet, but the prologue, a warning of how fragile civilization really is. From here, Max would become an icon, and post-apocalyptic cinema would never be the same again. Stalker, 1979 USSR. In Tarkovsky's Stalker, there are no explosions, mutants, or wars, only the zone. Born from a mysterious disaster, it is a forbidden area where the laws of nature seem to break down. A guide known as the Stalker leads a writer and a professor deep into this strange land, seeking a hidden room that can grant their innermost desires. But the journey becomes as much about their souls as about the destination. Tarkovsky crafts atmosphere through silence, ruins, rain, and stillness, turning the zone into a mirror of human longing and fear. Stalker showed that the apocalypse could be philosophical, poetic, and profoundly spiritual. It remains one of cinema's most enigmatic and influential works, proof that post-apocalyptic cinema can be art as well as survival story. Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, 1981, Australia. Civilization has fallen. The desert wasteland is ruled by savage gangs, fuel is worth more than gold, and survival depends on speed and steel. Max, now a drifter haunted by loss, finds himself drawn into the struggle of a small settlement protecting its precious gasoline convoy. The result is one of the most thrilling chase films ever made, filled with roaring engines, spiked leather, and explosive stunts. The Road Warrior crystallized the imagery of the wasteland, the cars, the chaos, the lone anti-hero. It became the defining vision of post-apocalyptic cinema, inspiring everything from Hollywood blockbusters to video games. This was the film that turned Mad Max into a legend and set the style for decades of apocalyptic storytelling. Threads, 1984, UK, set in Sheffield, England. Threads imagines the unthinkable, a nuclear strike on Britain and its aftermath over the decades. Families are torn apart in an instant, cities burn, and survivors face radiation sickness, starvation, and nuclear winter. But what makes the film truly devastating is its long perspective, showing how language, government, and even human compassion erode over time. Presented with documentary realism, it shocked audiences so deeply that many never forgot it. Threads is not entertainment, but a nightmare made real, a reminder of just how fragile society is when pushed to the edge. It remains one of the most harrowing depictions of nuclear apocalypse ever created, unmatched in its power to disturb and provoke. The Terminator, 1984, USA. From a future where machines rule after nuclear war, a cyborg assassin is sent back to kill the mother of humanity's last hope. James Cameron blends relentless action with the looming specter of technological apocalypse. Arnold Schwarzenegger's unstoppable Terminator became an icon, while the film's vision of Skynet and humanity's desperate resistance shaped decades of science fiction. Beneath the chases and explosions is a chilling idea that technology created to protect us could wipe us out instead. The Terminator wasn't just the start of a blockbuster franchise. It embedded the fear of artificial intelligence into popular culture. It showed that the end of the world might not come from bombs alone, but from the machines we build with our own hands. From Wells to Cameron, the history of post-apocalyptic cinema is the history of our fears. Each era added something new: nuclear dread, Romero's zombies, the wastelands of Mad Max, the rise of machines. Together, they built the foundation of a genre that never dies, because as long as we fear the end, we'll imagine it on screen. Which of these classics shaped your vision of the apocalypse the most?